Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. I'm Rosebud Reads, and welcome to my book garden. Sorry I'm a little late today. I had to finish up some stuff, and then I looked at the clock, and I was like, ah! But I'm here! Welcome to Peerless, Book 4, Part 2 live stream. We ended on a very interesting. We always end on very interesting points. This author likes leaving lots of cliffhangers. So I'm very excited to see where things end up going this time. I'm also kind of curious if we'll meet the head of the 13 floors of Yunhai this chapter, or if it'll still be a mystery. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. But yes, this is a very chill stream. What that means is I will be talking to my lovely book garden chat. I will be talking to the book. I will be talking to myself. Hello, Annika. How are you doing tonight? If that's not really your flavor, that's completely okay. But maybe stick around and see. You might enjoy it. Hello, Truffle. How are you tonight? It's definitely not everyone's type of reading, but we have fun here, and I hope you enjoy. This is not a sponsored stream. I do this because I can, and I also don't own anything except for the physical copy in front of me and my time, and most of the time, not even that. If there is anything triggering in the video or things that I think might be enough to be called triggering, I will put a trigger warning in the title after the stream. But during the live stream, I will not know if something is going to happen. So there is a little bit of a watch/listen at your own risk during the lives, but usually we have a little bit of a heads up. If something does happen, it will be marked in the title and the timestamps, but thank you. I got them a bit ago and just decided, you know what, I'm wearing them tonight. They're super fun. Thank you, Truffle. And I am doing good. I'm glad you're also doing good, Annika. The notifications failed me. You're right on time, Truffle. Yeah, they're super cool. But yeah, there will be a short summary in the description with kind of a basic summary of what happens during the trigger warning parts of the timestamp if you want to skip over it. Yeah. Oh, did this one get twisted a little bit? Oh, it's a little twisted. It's okay. There we go. There we go. Okay. More. Pronunciation is hard. I am not a fluent speaker, but I do my best. Sometimes I will kind of take a moment and look up things on my phone if I don't know, so we can all learn. But if I am pronouncing things incorrectly, which will happen, feel free to let me know either in the chat, in the comments, and I will try to fix it. I can't promise, but I will do my best. I think that's about it. I've got a little list, but I think that's it. But yeah, this is our second stream of Peerless Book 4, and things are really heating up. Like little Orieries. I really liked the characters, and I'm kind of wondering how Jiang Sao Shou will manage in the court. Ooh. But yeah. The glasses are so shiny today. It's okay. But yeah, I don't really think I have anything to add. The only exciting things that have really been happening in my life is been working on the Zuzi Lang cosplay, and it's coming along. I've been making a lot of scales and kind of armor looking scale things. I'm very proud of the patterns that I have actually ended up creating for the belt, for the shoulders, and can't wait to see how it comes together. I attempted to dye a robe yesterday with some luck. Episode 10 of Veil of Shadows, and I gotta admire Lu Weiyi's commitment to being a gremlin. I can actually show the dye job. It's far too light, but I have more dye coming tomorrow, so I'll get my big cauldron out and fix it up. Hang on, I'll be right back. So, hang on. I'll turn on the white color so you can see it. So it's not quite the right color, as you can see. It needs to be much darker. But I have faith that it will all come together once I have the correct dye. Oops. There we go. And then let me reset these lights. There we go. Yes, I am planning on finishing it for ASEN. I should tie-dye it another shade of green. It is a very nice green. It's kind of like a minty green. Maybe a little softer green. But not what I need. I have a different outer robe where most of the actual scales and such are going. Yeah. I know, it was so fun meeting you last time. But you're going to have an amazing time on your trip, so don't worry about it. I will share pictures. And you better share some pictures too. No pressure. No. It's going to be a great time. I'm going to do one day of Yan Wuxi. I think Saturday's probably going to be Zuzzy Lang, unless they do the cosplay meetup some other day. I want to meet up as Zuzzy Lang because I think people would be very excited to see that. Yes. I had a lot of fun at the October con I went to. It was called Hollow Fest, and it's very much a small con. It's literally a family oriented con. They made it purposely. It's only 2 years old. Next year will be its 3rd year running. And it was so much fun. It reminded me of old school cons, very homey. They had so many activities. It was just in like a hotel lobby, but that would be a fun one to meet up at. But yes, I am very excited. I will share more updates once I get them. It's just kind of all in pieces right now. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But for now, it's just bunches of pieces. Yeah, no, SakuraCon would be a lot of fun. I just would have to start planning early for it. And we'll see if that ends up working out. I would love to go to SakuraCon. It would be so much fun. But we'll see what's in the cards. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Before we do, let's read our injustices. So, we have our injustice to service workers sitting at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 34. with 2 justices to service workers. Injustices to page Xi is 5, 10, 13, with injustice to readers sitting at a crisp 2. Our injustice to animals and plants is sitting at a solid 5. And our injustice to innocence is a whopping 5, 10, 15, 17, with a half justice to innocence. Our shamelessness counter is a very shocking 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 59. So that is quite impressive. Oh, one other exciting thing I did today is fill a mug this big with boiling water, let it sit for a while, and then decide I wanted to transfer it to a different cup and dump the entire thing on my hand. So, yeah, that was not so smart, but also ouch. Do I think the picture in the front was Chubuchu just as the maid? This one? I think this is when he just gets stabbed. Yeah, it's okay. It's a little tender, but other than that, it's fine. I just was like, really? The one inside? This one? Maybe. Maybe. It could be. Yeah. No, it was a surprise. I had something else in my hand, so it just slipped. It might have been. That would make sense. So let's go ahead and set our marker. 12:30. So last time we had a little bit of a realization from Feng Xiao that he might actually like Chubuchu. Not a full realization, but a little bit of a oh no moment. Hello, Angela Graces. Welcome. It's exciting that we have someone new joining us. I hope you're doing well. We haven't started quite yet. Yeah, he was super mad that he fell in love with an invalid. But yes, it was quite funny. But now Chubuchu himself is actually kind of surprised that Feng Xiao actually came back, because in his own words, why would he do that? Feng Xiao had absolutely no reason to come back. But yes, welcome, Angela Graces 1. We're excited to have you here. We literally just started. We kind of do a little thing at the beginning where we chat about what's been going on in our life. If there's anything new that I've picked up or want to share, I share it at the beginning, and then we'll have timestamps going forward with when we actually start the chapters. And if there's anything triggering, I can't I'm kind of going to reiterate this. I haven't read this book before, so I don't know if something triggering might be coming up. So if things start getting a little dicey, I usually will pop in a trigger warning just in case, but just a heads up, I'm walking in blind for the most part. Feng Xiao, but he's not nearly pretty enough. But in any case, I'm excited that you're here. But yeah, so And then Chubushu also said what was most wrong about was himself. He could have ignored Fan Yun's words and simply left. He'd have to pass through the Ursa Major twin jade array, but since Fan Yun was the creator, Chubuchu was confident he knew it well enough to traverse it without running into either Feng Xiao or Yu Xiu. For such a smart man, he's very superficial. Also, Chubuchu set everything on fire. Literally. Outside, the Jijian Bureau was waiting to help them. If he extricated himself and ordered them to watch the cave entrance, even if they failed to capture the powerful fighters like Yu Xiu and Yuan Sensi, they'd at the very least sweep up the stewards and guards. Perhaps they'd even manage to snag Lin Yang or Ning Shiwu. They would be a massive step closer to taking down the 13 floors of Yunhai. Conversely, if he went to look for Feng Xiao now and Yu Xiu managed to find him first, Chubuchu would be in grave danger. He made his way to the entrance of the array in stops and starts, thoughts racing like a spinning carousel. All of them were cold and rational, urging him not to worry about Deputy Chief Feng. He should leave first and think later. If he were to wander the array, even a costly victory might be too much to ask of his ailing body. He would likely crumple before he found Feng Xiao, even without the aid of Yu Xiu. We have to remember this dude also got stabbed. Well, it wasn't exactly in the heart, it was pretty close to it. And then he got knocked unconscious. So his body was running on fumes before he got stabbed. It's rather impressive that he's still standing, and literally spite and his force of will are the only things that are really keeping him going right now. It's sure not his body. What insane notion had gotten into that fool's head this time? Why would he return to look for Chubuchu? Chubuchu sighed. He could feel his own searing breath. When he touched his forehead, his palm seemed to burn with alarming heat. He no longer had the energy to curse Feng Xiao aloud, so he cursed him over and over in his mind. His legs felt as if they were tied to a millstone, and a chilly breeze whipped his face and scattered the scorching heat of his breath. He shivered. Finally, he stood on the edge of the array. Another step, and he'd enter it. If he wanted to escape, he should go around to the other side so he could pass through safely. Chubuchu hesitated just a moment, then stepped forward. Feng Xiao, it seemed, had underestimated Fan Yun. After getting a general summary of the array from Chubuchu, he'd thought he could trap Yu Xiu. Instead, things had spiraled out of control. Yu Xiu wasn't the only one trapped. Feng Xiao was as well. There shouldn't have been any light in the array, yet the occasional flame leapt into the sky and the faint glow of fireflies flickered into existence. If he was rash enough to approach them, he was guaranteed to fall into a trap. He'd already had several close calls. The first time, the array had almost scrambled his mind. The next, he'd nearly been discovered by Yu Xiu. Even each was searching for the other as they sought a path out of the array, yet they were also trying to avoid being ambushed by their adversary. They crept forward inch by inch, yet seemed to only circle back to the same spot over and over again. Even Feng Xiao was beginning to feel fatigued. Yu Xiu's hidden weapon was taking effect, suppressing Feng Xiao's internal energy. Feng Xiao's energy was plentiful, but it wasn't infinite. He had to keep it circulating to fend off the cold of the array while staying on guard against Yu Xiu. At the same time, he was keeping an eye on the needle inside of his body. If he remained trapped like this, a single fate awaited him. It was cold consolation that, as far as he knew, Yu Xiu wasn't doing much better. Feng Xiao already injured the monk in their previous battle. Unless Yu Xiu escaped the array, it would eventually wear him down, and he'd perish. Feng Xiao had no desire to die with him. The path forked ahead, separated by 3 boulders. He was almost certain he'd seen this exact place not long ago. Frustrated, Feng Xiao realized he was going in circles. He'd taken the left path last time, so this time he took the right. The further he walked, the colder the air became. A faint glow emanated from deep within the fog. Light was more likely to mark a trap than an exit. Feng Xiao felt no relief. Instead, he slowed his pace. Without warning, a group of people rushed toward him through the thick and icy fog. At the front was Ming Yue, the third chief of the Jijian Bureau. When he caught sight of Feng Xiao, his honest face lit up with joy. "Ere long!" He strode over with his men. "I've finally found you! You left such vague messages. If I hadn't met Chubu Chu, I would never have spotted the entrance to this place." Feng Xiao blinked. "Chubu Chu got out?" he asked slowly. "Yes! He said you were still inside and asked me to bring reinforcements. Thank goodness we found you. Let's go. We should leave first and talk later." Ming Yue stretched out a hand to pull him over, but Feng Xiao flinched back. Ming Yue's hand closed on nothing. He looked at Feng Xiao in confusion. "Do you know the way out?" asked Feng Xiao. Light glinted in Ming Yue's eyes. "I do. Chubu Chu showed me." Feng Xiao's lip curved. He struck at Ming Yue without another word. "What are you doing?" Ming Yue was stunned. He couldn't avoid Feng Xiao's palm brimming with internal energy and took the blow head on. There was a bang like a clap of thunder, and the wind from the strike scattered the surrounding fog. Ming Yue and his men crumpled into fine powder. Feng Xiao snorted coldly. The Jijian Bureau had always acted on his orders. Ming Yue wasn't the type to overstep his authority. If Feng Xiao had yet to make his decision, Ming Yue wouldn't push him. On top of that, this was a terribly complex array. Feng Xiao refused to believe Ming Yue could learn its solution with just a few words from Chubu Chu. It could only be another illusion. I love that he's like, hey, if I couldn't solve it, there's no way that Ming Yue could figure this out just because Chubu Chu helped him. Like, if I can't figure it out, there's no way he could. He had already encountered several such illusions since entering. They blurred the boundaries between time and space, leaving Feng Xiao unable to tell how long he had been trapped. Injustice to Ming Yue. I don't think we actually put down that one. So I will actually mark down an injustice for Ming Yue right there. In the injustice to innocence, because he's just doing his own thing. So it's now 18. He could neither see nor touch the enemy. Never before had he been in such a predicament. Yeah, Feng Xiao's associates tend to attract a fair bit of friendly fire. Yep. Never before had he been in such a predicament, yet he was the one who had willingly stepped into the array. Feng Xiao was at the end of his patience. At this point, he'd prefer to run into Yu Xiu and Yuan Sanxi. 2 against 1 would still have been better than drifting about in the mist like this, wandering in endless loops. At that thought, he sensed someone approaching him from behind. They were still some distance away, perhaps several boulders back. But Feng Xiao noticed them immediately. Those footsteps were too heavy to be Yu Xiu's. Another illusion? Feng Xiao stood motionless, quietly waiting for the newcomer to approach. His hands flexed within his sleeves, ready to kill at a moment's notice. The smudge of a figure appeared from behind the boulder, moving toward him through the fog. Whoever it was appeared to be holding an orb of glowing green, most likely a night pearl. But that figure, those clothes, they were in complete contradiction. Feng Xiao narrowed his eyes, watching the figure struggle forward, holding on to the stones for support. At last they stopped a short distance from him, as if waiting for him to come meet them. Feng Xiao sneered and obliged. A slight shift of his feet, and he was right before them, striking out with his palm. The strike was largely a feint, with little internal energy behind it. An illusion of condensed mist would dissipate the moment his hand connected. But this time, his palm met a warm body. The newcomer quaked and staggered back into the boulder behind them, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Poor Chubuchu. As the warm blood splashed over the back of his hand, doubt finally surfaced on Feng Xiao's face. It's you? Hoping to confirm his guess, he stepped forward and caught the body. It was solid. He grabbed the person's face for a closer look. A hint of surprised joy colored his voice. It's really you! Dude, haven't you done enough damage? Apparently not. All right, now we will actually start chapter 123. Only when Chubuchu's warm body was in Feng Xiao's embrace did Feng Xiao truly believe it was him. Then he remembered he'd struck him. Chubuchu suffered from all sorts of ailments at the best of times, and he'd been stabbed in the chest not long ago. I'm glad someone finally acknowledged it. Though his organs, muscles, and bones were unharmed, he'd lost a large quantity of blood, and his vitality was greatly affected. In his current state, he'd never live long enough to die of old age. Despite Feng Xiao's natural belligerence, he was forced to admit that most of Chubuchu's injuries were more or less his fault. Are you all right? The moment he was out, he realized that it was a stupid thing to ask. Even so, he couldn't stop himself from voicing another foolish question. Why did you come into the array? He already knew the answer and was even secretly pleased about it, yet he still wanted to hear it from Chubuchu's own mouth. Feng Xiao mused that he'd never acted so brainlessly before. His soul seemed to have split into two. One half watched his idiocy coolly from the sidelines, while the other couldn't stop the words from tumbling out. He grabbed Chubuchu's wrist and channeled internal energy into him. Chubuchu finally shifted and spoke, his voice so hoarse it was nearly inaudible. Don't ask stupid questions. He was already here. What was the point of asking if he was all right or why he'd come? It was a waste of time, an indisputably idiotic thing to say. Deputy Chief Fang was never happy to lose a spat. Normally, he'd already fired back a teasing retort. Chubuchu had been ready to be interrogated over why he'd overestimated his abilities and gone running into the thick of battle to rescue him. But, to his surprise, Feng Xiao answered with a low hum and said nothing more. Oh, that's nice. The arms around Chubuchu tightened as internal energy continued to pour into his body in an almost reckless flood. Chubuchu was a little disturbed. Privately, he wondered if Feng Er had suffered brain damage from wandering in the array too long. No matter how abundant his internal energy was, he couldn't sustain this level of output. Chubuchu's chilled body slowly thawed in Feng Xiao's arms. The pain in his shoulder from Feng Xiao's palm strike faded as well. It was so comfortable he didn't want to move, yet he struggled to grab Feng Xiao's wrist. That's enough. Let's get out of here. Feng Xiao ignored him. Only when he was satisfied that he'd given enough energy did he stop. Your teacher's array seems a bit more complex than what you described. Obviously, he's the original designer. It's hardly surprising it evolved over the years. Chubuchu coughed twice. Well, that was 3 times, but you get the point. The congestion in his throat seemed to have eased a little. By sheer coincidence, Feng Xiao's palm strike must have cleared the blood pooling in his chest. Where is Yu Xiu? I mean, at least it helped somewhat. He's in the array too, and equally confounded, I imagine. If you can hold on a little longer, I want to finish him before we leave. Every additional moment Chubuchu spent in the array would do him harm. Most people would leave as quickly as possible after finding the person they were seeking, but Chubuchu nodded without protest. The feeling of being so helplessly held in another person's embrace was not one he liked. He was unused to it. He steadied himself within Feng Xiao's arms and stood up straight, then pushed Feng Xiao away. Feng Xiao grabbed his wrist. "You came here looking for me, right?" Feng Xiao's tone was a little strange, neither teasing nor sarcastic. Unable to read him, Chubuchu frowned. "No," he said tardily, and then shook off Feng Xiao's grasp. But he heard Feng Er chuckle, as if amused by the insincerity of his answer. Chubuchu was baffled. He looked at Feng Xiao like he was a fool, then turned around and began walking. True to its name, the Ursa Major Twin Jade Array contained two arrays, one large and one small, with the latter nestled within the former. With Chubuchu as their guide, they walked toward the heart of the array as freezing winds wailed and sent powerful gusts funneling between the boulders. I guess I wore the right earrings. Very space-like today. I wasn't even thinking about that. They were chilled to the bone, yet they could see lights and shadows dancing before them like flickering mirages. The clang of armor and weapons rang endlessly in their ears, confusing their senses. Even a powerful martial artist like Feng Xiao felt his heart pound and his vision swim. Yet following Chubuchu, they avoided the sinister winds and never stepped into another trap. Still, he didn't know the array inside out. He walked a few paces, then stopped, every step seemingly taken only after great thought. As they reached the edge of the stone forest, a bright light shone before them. It seemed the exit was in sight. Outside the cave, rain fell in a dizzying curtain, and in the sliver of sky above, they could make out a dense shroud of dark clouds. To anyone who'd been trapped in the array, this dreary scene meant freedom. This so-called exit was also almost guaranteed to be a trap. Yet after a brief hesitation, Chubuchu stepped through it. Cold air, brimming with murderous intent, rushed toward him from both sides. A hand yanked his collar just in time, sending him staggering backward as several steel arrows missed him by a hair's breadth. The arrowheads clanged as they collided. Feng Xiao tossed Chubuchu behind him one-handed, and the other reached for his zither strings. Buzzing with true chi, the strings pulled taut in midair and blocked the next wave of ferocious arrows. It was just enough. Feng Xiao and Chubuchu spun aside, and the iron arrows flew impotently forward to clatter on the ground. "Fan Yun, that old bastard!" Feng Xiao said in displeasure. "He had bad intentions from the start. He wanted to use us to vanquish the 13 floors. If we die in the process, he'll have killed two birds with one stone." Chubuchu's expression was placid. He wasn't remotely surprised. Even if this isn't the real exit, we're not far. Let's find it and wait there. If Yushu wants to leave, he'll have to pass through. With that, he pulled Feng Xiao away, yet to his surprise, Feng Xiao offered no resistance. He stepped back and slumped against a boulder, then slowly sat down. Chubuchu looked at him, confused. Feng Xiao sighed. "I can't walk any farther. Let's rest a bit. Why push ourselves? Maybe Yushiyu sat down to have a snack too." Chubuchu's first thought was that Feng Xiao was up to some new mischief. Still, he crouched down and touched his forehead. No fever. Feng Xiao grabbed his hand. "Stop feeling me up, Taoist Master Chu," he drawled. The corners of Chubuchu's mouth twitched as he tried to gently yank his hand back and failed. "Now you're the one feeling me up. How many times were you going to cope a feel if I hadn't grabbed your hand?" asked Feng Xiao. "Don't tell me you wouldn't have touched me again. There are so many who lust after my venerable self. How could I fail to see your ulterior motives? If you'd taken a fancy to me, just say so. I might even consider accepting your feelings." What the hell was he on about now? I'm going to mark that for one shameless. Unshameless. So we are, I believe, at ticking up by the second 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. We have reached 60. Chubachu was used to the casual vulgarities that spilled out whenever Feng Er ran his mouth, but it wasn't like him to fool around at such a critical moment. A thought occurred to him. "Are you injured?" "Nonsense!" Feng Xiao spoke in the same lazy tone. "How could I, unparalleled martial artist that I am? How could I be, unparalleled martial artist that I am? Don't think you can take advantage of me just because it's dark in here. I won't let you have your way." You say that now. We'll see how long that lasts. He yanked the crouching Chubuchu toward him and grabbed the back of his head to keep him from standing. A palm blast from behind blew past Chubuchu. It narrowly missed him, thanks to Feng Xiao. Foiled, Yushu had no choice but to step out from his hiding place and face Feng Xiao head on. Chubuchu was shoved aside as Feng Xiao and Yushu fell straight into battle. Yeah, that was kind of shameless. Alright, 61. Yushu must have been there for some time, spying on them and waiting for an opportunity to strike. He'd been out for blood from the moment he heard Chibuchu say they weren't far from the exit. His presence hadn't escaped Feng Xiao's notice. He'd merely been waiting for Yushu to show his face. True Qi rose in towering waves between the two combatants, answering the yin energy within the array like a war trumpet and drawing in the cold, dark air all around them. Yushu and Feng Xiao were unaffected, protected by their internal energies, but Chubu Chu felt a freezing wind buffet his face. The air streamed in through his nose, and a tightness seized his chest. He instantly became nauseous and started coughing with discomfort. The sound of his wheezing seemed to remind Yushu of something. "Deputy Chief Feng," he sneered, "did you not discover the needle inside your body?" He wove through the fog as quick as a shadow melding into the gray mists. As he circled, he moved with the flow of yin energy, seeking out his chance to attack. He obviously hadn't wasted his time while trapped, but had discovered some of the rules of the Twin Jade Array. Yushiu's words confirmed Chubuchu's guess. His heart sank, and he strained to make out Feng Xiao's figure within the fog. His attacks remained fierce and decisive, but the more fierce and decisive he was, the more certain Chubuchu felt that something was wrong. It was Feng Xiao's style to nettle his opponents. He never let up until they were hopping with rage. Yet now he was silent. Perhaps Yushu hadn't noticed, but Chubuchu saw it instantly. Feng Xiao had no energy to spare for chatter. What can I do? Chubuchu thought. He looked around, frowning. Yushu remained on the defensive, patiently parrying Feng Xiao's strikes. He was in no hurry to end this. Feng Xiao's approach appeared to be the opposite. The winds from his palm strikes were more cutting than the yin-infused gales within the array. His every move brimmed with bloodlust as he flashed between forms, too quick to see. Yushu dodged and attacked to his front, only for Feng Xiao to vanish into thin air. A moment later, he appeared at Yushu's side and slammed a palm toward his chest, shattering the protective barrier of true qi around him. Yushu spat out a mouthful of blood, his eyes wide with alarm. But Feng Xiao didn't take the chance to press him. Instead, he paused. At once, Yushu understood. Rather than fleeing to nurse his injury, he stepped forward, laughing. A small dagger shot from his billowing sleeves, and he grasped the handle. Focusing all his energy into the blade, he slashed at Feng Xiao's head. A fight between master martial artists never lasted long, unless you're Yan Wuxi, and then it lasts forever. The first glimpse of the enemy's weakness spelled life or death. A moment ago, Yushu had been fearful. Now he advanced, full of confidence, unwilling to retreat. The tables had turned in a split second. He was sure of his judgment and grateful to the pavilion leader. If not for his gift of the needle, Yushu might never have gained the upper hand over Feng Xiao. True qi surged into the blade. At that moment, even the yin-infused winds Let's start that over. True qi surged into the blade. At that moment, even the yin-infused winds shied away from its edge. One slash cleaved them into two, and they wrapped around the dagger as it whistled toward Feng Xiao. Yan Wuxi drags his fights out because it's more fun that way. Yeah. Feng Xiao leapt back, but his movements were slower than before. If the blade connected, it might not behead him, but it would slice his chest open at the least. Wherever it fell, it would put him half in his grave. But the blade whizzed past. Feng Xiao's figure vanished into the mists as the blade struck stone instead of flesh. The blade's qi splashed out on either side, shattering the floor of the tunnel with a resounding rumble. Yet Feng Xiao was nowhere in sight. Yushu stood stunned. He swept his furious gaze to the side. Sure enough, Chubu had disappeared as well. Chubu dragged Feng Xiao through the array, swerving and dodging far too nimbly for an ailing, injured man. In contrast, Feng Xiao staggered as he walked, then went limp without warning. He slumped against Chubu, almost knocking them both to the ground. I need to remove the needle first. I can't move even half my body anymore, Feng Xiao said through gritted teeth. He'd never imagined Yushu's hidden weapon was so powerful. He'd thought he could suppress it until they escaped, but the moment he'd drawn on his internal energy during the fight, the silver needle had begun to weave through his body with his qi, and he'd almost collapsed on the spot. Ow! Just imagine that. Like a sliver of metal / qi just swerving through your body. That's awful. Like, I'd rather be stabbed, honestly, rather than... That's like blood mites, but worse. Chubu didn't say much either. He tugged Feng Xiao over to the stone wall and forced him to sit. I used some of the stones to mimic the twin jade array and made a smaller array, so now it's a triple jade array. But a little trick like that won't buy us much time. Yushu will be able to break out with brute force. Hurry up, he urged. You, help me. Feng Xiao grabbed Chubuchu's shoulder and pulled him down, little by little, to sit beside him. He balled his other hand into a loose fist. Press on my Guan Yuan acupoint. Use moderate force. The Guan Yuan acupoint lay 3 inches below the navel. Chubu had some medical knowledge, but he lacked practical experience. He felt his way toward Feng Xiao's navel and carefully measured out a distance of 3 inches. Feng Xiao couldn't take his dallying. He grabbed Chubuchu's hand and tugged it downward. Right here. Press on it with one hand and don't let go. Move your other hand up along the Renmai meridian just above it. Don't stop until I say so. That's not weird at all. Chubu didn't think twice. He quickly did as he was told. With Chubu closing off the Ren meridian for him and stopping the needle from moving around, Feng Xiao gathered his energy to expel it from his body. But it was as if the needle realized it was under threat. It buzzed restlessly and tried to flee into the blood pumping through his veins. Ah! Feng Xiao's face paled. He pursed his lips and squeezed his eyes shut, his usual teasing smile released with cold severity. Chubachu's eyes were trained on Feng Xiao, watching for any change in his expression. In a sense, he and Feng Xiao were birds of a feather. Both of them were enormously determined, willing to do whatever it took to reach their goals. Feng Xiao normally concealed that determination beneath a veneer of carelessness. Yet right now, Chubachu felt that the grave look on Feng Xiao's face was much more pleasing to the eye than his usual blithe smiles. Feng Xiao shuddered. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, and he slumped forward. How is it? Chubachu caught him and wrapped an arm around his shoulders, guiding him down to lean his forehead against the crook of Chubachu's neck. I see. Not so good, I'm afraid, said Feng Xiao weakly. Hold on just a little longer. The exit is right in front of us. Chubachu didn't waste any time. He was tugging Feng Xiao's arm over his own shoulders to pull him up when Feng Xiao stopped him. Even if we get out, we don't know if the Jijian Bureau will find us before the 13 floors do. If we run into the pavilion leader, I don't like our chances. What's the point of saying all that now? Save your breath and escape first, Chubachu admonished him hoarsely. Yet before he could move, he heard a soft sigh in the darkness and something warm pressed against his lips. Oh! Oh! Well, we got another one for the shamelessness counter. Ba-boom! Woohoo! That's surprising. I'm focusing on the eyes of Chubachu, but I also just noticed how big Feng Xiao's hair bun is right now, and it looks almost comically big. I feel like it should be just a little smaller. It might be the angle. Maybe it's the angle. I guess it's the. Oh, okay. I see the hair crown now. Makes it look less funny. Ooh, it's getting spicy. Damn, Feng Xiao, you go, girl. Right? All right. 48. Chapter 124. Chubachu had weathered many dangers in his life and crawled back from the gates of hell more than once. He was neither god nor mortal. It was impossible for him to foresee everything. Even so, he'd never been like this, struck dumb and stunned, as rigid as a block of wood. Within the darkness of the array, the mist had yet to disperse. The winds wailed, and the cold fog drifted thick around them. Perhaps there were eyes out in the dark, watching and waiting for the perfect chance to strike. Yet Feng Xiao paid none of it any heed. He took advantage of Chubachu's sluggish reaction and grew more forward, catching Chubachu's wrists and twisting them behind his spine, pushing their torsos flush together. Cold stone, and that's a shamelessness. So 63. Cold stone was at Chubachu's back, yet the unmistakable heat of a blazing body was pressed to his front, searing even through his clothes. The contrast was like the stark line separating yin from yang, or the heavens from the earth. For several moments, Chubachu was frozen stiff. A look of shocked disbelief was etched into his habitually inscrutable features. He'd even forgotten to moderate his gaze, and his eyes bored into Feng Xiao. His mind roiled with chaos and confusion as his thoughts circled between this man has gone mad and this Feng bastard has gone into chi deviation after failing to expel the poison. Which it was, he had no idea. Displeased with his distraction, Feng Xiao bit down hard on his lip, and 64. It was a new injury on top of the old. Chubachu's thoughts were dragged back to the pain he'd been in when he'd woken up and his eyes narrowed. So it was you! Feng Xiao had anticipated Chubachu would struggle and easily subdued him. Last time, he hadn't had the chance to explore, but now he could finally indulge to his heart's content. Finding the taste enjoyable, he transformed into a beast that had snared its prey, first trapping it in his arms, then luxuriating in the satisfaction of his catch. He wasn't surprised when his prey resisted. He grabbed Chubachu's hands and wrote one character on his palm: Endure. Chubachu abruptly fell still. Feng Xiao knew he must be remembering one of the last times they'd kissed like this. Back in the Western Khaganate, Chubachu and Feng Xiao had pretended to be cut sleeves to mislead and win over the first prince. They'd pawed and groped each other right in front of Prince Yi Xun's servant. Dang, Feng Xiao, slow down, girl. Chubachu almost certainly thought the same thing was happening now, that Feng Xiao hoped to trick Yu Xiu into dropping his guard, proverbially luring the snake from his hole. Feng Xiao laughed to himself. It was true he wanted to lure out Yu Xiu, but more than that, he wanted to make up for his own regrets. He'd missed his chance to go farther last time, so this time he wouldn't stop halfway, and that's pretty damn shameless. 65. If Feng Xiao could profit at someone else's expense, he would. That had always been his style. Chubachu had stopped struggling, but his body remained as stiff as a wooden puppet as Feng Xiao kissed him over and over. Feng Xiao's breath came in waves, crashing over him like seawater as they slowly eroded his boundaries. Eyes stubbornly open, Chubachu glared. In his heart, he'd already cursed Feng Xiao's ancestors back to the beginning of time. Part of his frustration came from the way his body responded to Feng Xiao's impossible to control. Part of it was that he refused to be the submissive one. Only his rational mind stopped him from slapping Feng Xiao away. All right, that whole collective gets one. 66. Yu Xiu still hadn't appeared. What was he doing? Hadn't it been long enough? And why was this Feng bastard's tongue so long? What was he, some demon from hell? It was practically lodged in his throat. Wasn't this a show they were putting on for Yu Xiu? Did he need to go this far? 67. The way they're going, we might get 100 by the end of the stream. Feng Xiao was almost shaking with laughter, his body trembling as he tried to hold it back. He'd never imagined Chubachu could be so cute. He'd told him not to move, and he really wasn't moving. But he couldn't laugh. He'd picked up an enormous windfall, and if he smiled, all his efforts would go to waste. Considering Chubachu's tendency to hold grudges, he'd remember this for the rest of his life. Behind them, there was indeed an eye watching the scene unfold. The owner of the eye was a handsome man. If he wished, he could fill his smile with enough love and compassion to wipe all the cruelty from the world. But since the loss of his eye, the bloodlust in his heart had broken through the prison of his neat facade. Like a wild beast set free in the mountains, it could no longer be tamed. Instead, it rampaged through him, unleashing all the savagery, hypocrisy, and ruthlessness within. He loathed those who'd driven him to this point. He hated powerful people, and he hated people who sat at the top, luxuriating in their glory even more. The two men in front of him just happened to be both. Cautiously, Yu Xiu quieted his breathing. He watched from a distance as Feng Xiao attempted to heal himself, waiting for the opportune moment. It wasn't time yet. If he was patient just a little longer, if he could wait until the moment the needle was about to be expelled, then Feng Xiao would be at his most vulnerable. Only by striking at precisely the right moment could he be certain of killing Feng Xiao. With Feng Xiao dead, it didn't matter how cunning Chu Wuchu was. He would meet with the same fate. Suddenly, Yu Xiu's eyes widened, and he almost gasped aloud. At first, he thought he was seeing things, but as he watched, those two figures pressed together. Feng Xiao's movements were unmistakable. Yu Xiu and Princess Qianjin had also once embraced with only the moon and flowers as their witness. They'd sworn vows to each other, and he had promised to rescue her from a political marriage. Only then could she be truly free. He looked back at Feng Xiao and Chu Wuchu. Their great enemy was here, yet those two weren't they at all concerned for their lives? How could they still be in the mood for a tryst? Yu Xiu almost burst out laughing. So that's how it is. The Jijian and Shuyue bureaus, two pillars of the power of the imperial court. To think their leaders shared such a filthy and shameful relationship. Hey now. Despite their pretense of being at each other's throats, the Feng Chu pair were in secret collusion. If Yang Jian and Dugu Chai Lu knew, would they still be happy to listen to their advice? To trust them? Had Yu Xiu still been the Prince of Jin's counselor, he'd have turned and left without a word. He'd have gone straight to the Prince of Jin and told him this secret, grasped their weakness tightly in his hands, and used it as blackmail. But he had nothing left. Chu Chu had exposed his identity, and the Prince of Jin had cast him out. Chu Chu and Feng Xiao had even managed to ruin the 13th floor's secret gathering. Yu Xiu's fingers tightened around the dagger in his hand. When he moved, it was so fast he seemed to become one with the mists. The dagger slid from his sleeve as he charged, piercing toward them like light on rippling water, like an arcing rainbow. His mind entered a state of perfect clarity. In that moment, he understood everything. He broke through the bottleneck that had kept him from advancing in his martial arts. Even if I stand at the edge of a cliff, I will look ahead without fear. My blade follows my lead, traveling where my heart demands. This was a speed no mortal could match. If only he'd grasped this move 10 years earlier, then even a 1,000-strong army couldn't have stopped him from stealing the princess away to a place where no one could find her. No matter what her wishes were, he could have spent a lifetime waiting for her to understand. If only he'd grasped it back in the royal yurt during his decisive battle with Feng Xiao, then he could have at least felled his enemy. But he only grasped it now. Why now? Resentment blazed within his heart, disrupting the rhythm of his breathing. Yeah, Yu Xiu had a breakthrough out of sheer rage. That he did. The rest happened in an instant. The dagger pierced Feng Xiao's back. Yu Xiu felt his true qi split open Feng Xiao's flesh, felt the blood spurt from the wound to spray over the upper half of his face. No! Yu Xiu stopped. It wasn't blood that struck his forehead. It was the needle. Liao Yan Xiu Pu. Was that why Feng Xiao hadn't moved until now? Had he been waiting for him to strike the entire time? Without thinking, Yushu's hand rose to his brow to check. In the twinkling of an eye, Feng Xiao leaned forward and smoothly flicked a hand behind him. A zither string infused with dark wind shot at Yushu. Yushu still had his dagger in hand, flying forward. It was certain to pierce Feng Xiao's back, but at the same moment, the zither string would slit Yushu's throat. Should he perish with Feng Xiao or step back and preserve his life? Hindered by his distraction, the blade lost its momentum. Morale was a tricky thing. It might be high at the decisive moment, but it would collapse the minute one's passion waned. The instant Yushu lost the all-consuming desire to kill Feng Xiao, he was destined to fail. He reeled back, and the dagger retreated with him. Feng Xiao took the chance to turn, his billowing sleeves raised like a great rock, spreading its wings, a rook, spreading its wings as he swooped down from above. Yushu turned on his heel and fled, but it was too late. The zither string was shooting forward like an arrow springing from its bow. Bringing with chi and cloaked in the yin-infused wind, it streaked through the air with a mournful whistle. A scarlet line materialized on the back of Yushu's neck. The crimson thread spread rapidly until it was a necklace of blood carved deep into his flesh. Yushu's legs sprinted onward, but his head had already parted from his body. It tumbled to the ground, frozen in an expression of shock and anger, as if unable to believe his death had come. The bloody string fell beside his head, just like its victim, crashing down from soaring heights. When Yushu had first appeared in service of the Prince of Jin, he'd possessed the aura of an enlightened monk, handsome, gentle, and full of silent compassion. He'd drawn the admiration of many ladies in the capital. Yet today, Buddhist Master Yushu and all his bright prospects had died in this dark and sunless cave. It was a miserable end. Feng Xiao heaved a long sigh of relief. He reserved no sympathy for his enemy, but, as a fellow warrior, he'd sensed Yushu's breakthrough at the end. He hadn't had time to consider it at such a critical moment. He'd had to trust his intuition and strike. If he'd been a fraction slower or more careless, the man lying dead on the ground would be him. A cough came from behind him as Chubuchu rose. You seem quite well now, Deputy Chief Feng. Shit, thought Feng Xiao. He coughed twice, then clutched his chest and fell forward. He intended to slump against Chubuchu again, or for Chubuchu to reach out and support him. Instead, Chubuchu stepped aside. This man was unbelievable. Meng Xiao couldn't actually throw himself on the ground, so he smoothly caught himself on the nearby stone wall to save himself from embarrassment. I think Yushu's dagger nicked me. I'm a bit dizzy. Please check if it was poisoned, he said feebly. Chubuchu hummed. Let me take a look. He stepped behind Feng Xiao and slapped him hard on the back. Feng Xiao almost hecked up a lungful of blood. He coughed violently and without pause. This time it wasn't faked. Vexed, he said. Is that how you treat your savior? So, that was a little bit shameless, not gonna lie. I'm gonna cross these ones off and we'll make a new row. Him pretending to be sick and falling forward. It looks to me like you've been suffering from excessive internal heat lately, Deputy Chief Fang, said Chubuchu tonelessly. You've probably gone without the attentions of a woman for too long. I was simply trying to dispel some of the heat for you. It's really too intense. How about I give you another slap? Feng Xiao sputtered a laugh. His anger dissipated like smoke, and he sighed. I fear this heat will be hard to cure. Look at the mediocre masses out there. Who could be worthy of my esteemed gaze? Forget women. To me, even Feng Xiaolian, a ruinous beauty capable of toppling nations, is merely another woman whose looks will fade with time. Form is emptiness, as they say. All things are void. He paused deliberately and looked Chubachu up and down. Only a certain sick invalid is barely passable, he said pointedly. Another man might have been moved, but Chubachu's expression remained blank. He stared at Feng Xiao for a long time, then said coolly, back in the Western Cognate, it was necessary to win the first prince's trust. I had no choice. Today you used me as bait for Yu Xiu. Consider us even. There won't be a next time. You say that now. His brow was heavy with fatigue, but his gaze was as sharp and clear as ever, as if it could pierce all the schemes of the world while standing detached and unaffected, beyond the red dust of the mortal realm. He said no more after that, but turned and left, looking for the way out. Feng Xiao followed a few paces behind. There wouldn't just be a next time, he thought. There'd be a time after that, and a time after that one too. You wish to remain a bystander, aloof and unmoored, but I wish to drag you into that red dust, send you tumbling until you're feathered in phoenix down. I want you unable to detach yourself ever again. Whoo! Oh boy. That was internally shameless, if I do say so myself. Yeah, that's not weird at all. Sorry, I just got booped. Right. Alright, one sec. Alright. Chapter 125. 107. 35. Chapter 125. Without Yushu hindering them, Chubuchu swiftly found a path out of the array. But moments after making their grand escape, they found their way barred again. A man stood at the entrance of the cave, his hands behind his back. It seemed he'd been waiting a long time. When they walked out, he didn't appear surprised in the least. I see you've dealt with Yu Xiu. Chubuchu stopped in his tracks. Fan Yun smiled. If I hadn't sent the guards away and left you the lamp oil and dagger, you might still be a prisoner. And if I hadn't obstructed Yuan Sensi for you just now, you'd have found yourself up against another powerful enemy directly after dealing with Yu Xiu. Chubuchu nodded. Thank you, Xiansheng. That expression, that demeanor, there was no trace of either gratitude or shame, as if Fen Yun's assistance was to be expected. No matter how well-mannered Fen Yun might be, he couldn't resist raising a brow. Buchu, it's been so long, yet if anything, you've become more callous. You remain on your guard even after the assistance I've rendered you. To think you mistrust me still. It's truly saddening. Chubachu remained unmoved. Xiansheng is not being entirely honest. For you, the best outcome would have been for Feng Xiao to slaughter everyone in the 13 floors, then perish together with me in the array. It's a pity the heavens didn't grant your wish. You played a long game, yet here we are, still alive. Had Fan Yun truly planned to save them, he could have entered the array at any time. Yet he'd waited outside. Perhaps he hadn't tried to kill them, but neither had he wanted them to live. Taken aback, Fan Yun began to laugh. He'd known Chu Chu had seen through him, but he hadn't expected it to be so completely. Feng Xiao took a few steps forward, interposing himself between Fan Yun and Chu Chu. His feet seemed to have moved unconsciously. Sir, you were the one who lured us here, he said. You hoped we would clash with the 13 floors and destroy each other. How close are you to your goals now, I wonder? Fan Yun saw what he'd done and smiled. You're injured, but I am not. If I wish to kill Chubuchu now, you cannot stop me. Feng Xiao spoke only 3 words. I can try. Perhaps he couldn't kill Fan Yun, but he could certainly make things difficult for him. Fan Yun gave it some thought. Chubuchu's theme song. What's Chubuchu's theme song? That's not weird at all. I missed something. Fan Yun gave it some thought. I think you're in top chat. Am I? Oh! Maybe. I don't know. I'm gonna keep going. If he could write off both Chubuchu and Feng Xiao in one stroke, he'd have achieved half his goals. But he, too, had been injured during his fight with Yuan Sanxi. If he wanted to kill Chubuchu, he'd have to go through Feng Xiao. And even injured, Feng Xiao's martial prowess meant he was still dangerous. There might be no victor. Hang on. If he wanted to kill Chubuchu, he had to go through Feng Xiao. And even injured, Feng Xiao's martial prowess meant he was still dangerous. There might be no victor at all, yet both of them would pay a steep price. Before the secret meeting at Mount Tiannan, Fan Yun had assumed Chubuchu and Feng Xiao were at odds. Though they were both Su officials and close confidants of the emperor, they were happy to kick each other when they were down and showed each other no sympathy. Fan Yun had never imagined that in the face of that danger, they would willingly put aside their prejudices and work together to safely escape the Ursa Major twin jade array. Fan Yun heaved a silent sigh of regret. Perhaps it was time to come clean. It's true I was never loyal to the 13 floors of Yunhai. If not for me, you might have never known that this place existed. Now you've got a great accomplishment under your belts, and you've even escaped unharmed. You ought to thank me. Though it's unfortunate that, despite saying he'd come, the pavilion leader never arrived. The depths of his malice are beyond comprehension, and his inscrutable exterior conceals a scheming heart. He must have suspected me for a long time. The secret meeting was a test of my loyalty. Well, he failed. Since you're not truly a member, there should be no issue telling us who the pavilion leader is, as well as his origins and background, said Chubuchu. Fan Yun considered, then said, You've seen him before. He was in Xiaomo when you confronted Duan Shihu. Chubuchu instinctively glanced at Feng Xiao, who met his eyes. Feng Xiao was running through the list in his mind. Bing Xian, Yan Shuxing, all the others they'd encountered. Finally, he landed on one name, Xiao Lu. As soon as he thought it, Chubuchu spoke. Xiao Lu. Fan Yun nodded. Correct. Xiao Lu was elegant and refined, an illustrious name among his peers. In the Southern Dynasty, he was both a renowned member of the literati and a skilled swordsman. But his withered right hand meant he could only wield the sword from his left, and he was unable to become an official. He was exceptionally talented, yet had no outlet for his gifts. It was a terrible pity. After their interactions in Xiaomo, Chubuchu had been left with a good impression of him, perhaps out of an awareness of their shared rocky beginnings, or because he admired a fellow intellectual. It didn't surprise him in the least to hear Xiao Lu was the mastermind behind the 13 floors of Yunhai. Uh, Feng Xiao narrowed his eyes. He deliberately hid his strength when I fought him. I wasn't there, so I couldn't say, said Fan Yun. But I can tell you he's a man of incredible talent, not at all your inferior as a martial artist. If he lost to you in a few moves, he'll have done so on purpose. Chibuchu frowned. He said he was there to rescue a relative kidnapped by Duan Shihu. The young woman called him Chigua. I heard it myself. The idea that the pavilion leader of the 13 floors of Yunhai was unable to protect his own kin, that he'd been forced to let his subordinate use her as a toy, was laughable. Fan Yun smiled. In that case, you were misled by your own cleverness. From what I understand, those women had been tortured to the point of insanity. A fleeting moment would hardly be sufficient for her to recognize her kin. Regardless of what name Xiao Lu called if someone showed concern and attempted to help her, it's natural she might make a mistake. I'm guessing Xiao Lu didn't give the poor woman time to fully regain her senses. Chibuchu nodded. I was indeed negligent there. Years ago, I happened to encounter Xiao Lu while traveling through Jiangnan. He was seriously injured and hiding beneath a bamboo raft in the water with enemies above and pursuers close behind. I saved him from the danger, and he expressed deep gratitude. After that, we maintained contact and often exchanged letters. He's no less intelligent than you, able to grasp grand concepts with only the slightest hints, and so I greatly admired his talents. Feng Xiao feigned astonishment. What peculiar hobbies you have, sir. Not only do you enjoy playing master to others, you have a knack for picking students who turn on you. The corners of Chubuchu's mouth curled slightly. Ben Yun also gave a wry smile. No need to mock me. It's true I gravely misjudged his character. At the time, I viewed him as merely a talented young man from a prestigious clan, frustrated in his ambitions. Uh, Whatever he asked, I answered without hesitation. 2 years ago, he invited me to join the 13 floors of Yunhai, and expressed his desire for me to take the position of San Xiansheng, third among the directors. Only then did I realize how many masters he'd been quietly recruiting, and the magnitude of the scheme he'd woven. Xiao Lue hails from the Southern Dynasty, mused Chubuchu. The Shao clan was the ruling family of a previous dynasty, and their social connections are extensive. Sorry, hang on. Xiao Lue hails from the Southern Dynasty, mused Chubuchu. The Xiao clan was the ruling family of a previous dynasty, and their social connections are extensive. By contrast, the current emperor of the Southern Chen dynasty, Chen Shu Bao, is the second Aduo. He's a fool beyond saving. There is no shortage of capable individuals eager to exert their influence over the Southern dynasty or even claim the throne for themselves. Yet if the 13 floors of Yunhai have accomplished anything in the south, I've heard little of it. You're right, said Fan Yun, because each time he schemed against Chen Shu Bao, I quietly sabotaged him. Understanding dawned on Chubuchu. Now everything made sense. Aduo Duo was also the nickname of Liu Shan, the famously incompetent ruler of the Shu Han dynasty. His father, Liu Bei, entrusted him to the great strategist Shu Gui Liang, Zhu Gui Liang, who perished in his service. Fan Yun served the Southern dynasty, so he wished to thwart Xiao Luo's ambitions there. But he would be no better off if Chu Wuchu and Feng Xiao emerged victorious. The best outcome, as far as Fan Yun was concerned, was for Xiao Lue and Chu Wuchu to engage in a match that would ensure their mutual destruction. Shu Guo Liang mentioned. Zhu Guo Liang mentioned. I never imagined someone as intelligent as Xian Shang, who claims to know everything about the world and its politics, would do something so foolish, said Chubuchu. To think you would pour all your energies into assisting such a hopelessly incompetent king. A hint of bitterness finally warped Fan Yun's smile. Now there you're mistaken. Chen Shu Bao is not merely incompetent. He's so inept, even the foolish Emperor Aduo of Shu Han pales in comparison. Of this I'm fully aware, but an old friend entrusted me with the task, and thus I have no choice but to give it my all. Must have been one hell of a friend if you're literally sabotaging entire dynasties to do this. Hi, Esper Lady. Welcome. How you doing tonight? We just got out of the array and are now talking with Fan Yun. And he is spilling the reason of why is he doing all of this. And it's for he swore to protect Chen Shu Bao for a friend. An old friend entrusted me with this task, and thus I have no choice but to give it my all. I know it's impossible, but still I must make the attempt. From the moment I swore this vow, I was prepared to fail utterly. Who is this old friend for whom Xian Shang is willing to do so much? Inquired Chubuchu. He passed long ago. There's no point in mentioning him now. Yeah. You did miss the kiss. You did. Yeah. Friend. From that moment I swore this vow, I was prepared to fail utterly. Who is this old friend for whom Xian Shang is willing to do so much? Inquired Chubuchu. He passed long ago. There's no point in mentioning him now. Fan Yun closed his eyes, burying all the tribulations he'd weathered and the weaknesses he'd inadvertently revealed. When he opened them again, he was once more the accomplished strategist, the Zhu Guoliang, who'd masterfully played Chu Bu Chu and the 13 floors against each other in order to reap the rewards. Enough chatter, Fan Yun said finally. I'll give you crucial information about the 13 floors. I've given you crucial information about the 13 floors. Shouldn't you offer me something in return? What do you want? Asked Chu Bu Chu. Either of your lives will do. Before the words were out, he was moving, the smile still on his face. Fan Yun swept toward them like a whirlwind, his hand outstretched to grab Chu Bu Chu. All right. Just for you, Esper Lady. Here. There you go. That's what you missed. There you go. You're welcome. All right, chapter 126. $126.15. All right. Chapter 126. Actually, that's kind of funny. We're starting 126 at 1 hour 26:15. That never happens. It's never going to happen again, probably. The instant Fan Yun leapt forward, Feng Xiao moved as well, launching a palm strike at Fan Yun's back. If Fan Yun hoped to protect himself, he would have to abandon his attack on Chu Bu Chu. But when Chu Bu Chu flinched back from Fan Yun's incoming strike, the fierce air currents of the blow gentled, transforming into a soft breeze that caressed his face. Fan Yun turned from his feint again and lunged toward Feng Xiao. Chu Bu Chu saw at once. Fan Yun's target had been Feng Xiao all along. With Feng Xiao dead, Chu Bu Chu would have no choice but to surrender, while if Feng Xiao escaped, Fan Yun would be plagued with endless troubles. It was too late for Feng Xiao to switch tactics in time. Fan Yun was already at his back. I liked it. There's something fun about a character who can really appreciate how screwed he is about to be. And I don't mean in... it's not meant that in the fun way. No. I respect that he actually stuck to his word, even though he knew it would royally screw him over. Yeah. Seriously, must have been a really good friend. It was too late for Feng Xiao to switch tactics in time. Fan Yun was already at his back. He withdrew his hand and turned to catch Fan Yun's strike hard on his shoulder. A zither string flickered out from his other hand, forcing Fan Yun to leap back. Feng Xiao had taken a blow to the shoulder, but Fan Yun had fared no better. The qi-infused string had opened a gash on his arm. Blood soaked through the torn cloth of his sleeve and enveloped his arm in crimson. From start to finish, everything had happened in the space of one of Chu Bu Chu's breaths. The two clashed again in the next moment, ignoring Chu Bu Chu entirely. Their collision was like a violent tempest, complete with roaring thunder as their chi exploded outward to sweep up the rain-wet leaves littering the ground outside the cave. The fallen leaves churned through the air in a howling dance, accompanied by grit and debris. If anyone escaped the array now, they'd barely have time to celebrate before finding themselves tossed back into the cave by the maelstrom of chi. The force of their battle surged towards Chu Bu Chu, shoving him back step by step. In the blink of an eye, he found himself at the edge of a cliff. He wrapped his arms around a tree trunk just in time, or he'd have found himself plummeting to his death without Fan Yun having to lift a finger. I mean, considering the Zither was like a world-class legendary zither, I guess you could consider it an injustice, but the people he did it to weren't really innocent, so we're just gonna count it in our mind. I'm not going to start counting injustices to inanimate objects. That one's an injustice to sensibilities. I guess it could be marked as shameless. He's shameless enough to wreck a mythical treasure. There we go. So we're at 65 for shameless. Okay. Only now did Chubachu truly grasp his teacher's strength. Fan Yun was a man of great knowledge and breadth of mind. He'd traveled the world when he was young, and later his talents had been recognized by Liu Li Palace when they'd invited him to join them as a consultant. But in truth, he had little connection with the record-keeping sect. He'd retained all his old habits. He was carefree and unrestrained, roaming the land like an idle cloud or wild crane. All that was known about him was that he was a descendant of the Fan clan. Say that 10 times fast. His martial arts, his origins, his education, all remained a mystery. After taking over the Shuyue Bureau, Chubuchu had sent his people to secretly investigate Fan Yun and found that he was closely associated with Linshuan Academy, the largest sect in the Southern Dynasty. Though his martial arts incorporated his own innovations and improvements, the shadow of Linshuan Academy's signature style was perceptible in his moves. Linshuan Academy was a dedicated proponent of Confucianism, and their academy masters were all renowned Confucians in addition to being formidable martial artists. They devoted their lives to the idea of assisting a wise emperor in unifying the Central Plains and restoring the land to the Han people. All right, before we go on with that, we actually are being blessed by two illustrations rather closely together. I wonder if the zither strings are like wrapped around his wrist, or if he like implanted them into his skin, because like they look like they're coming out of his palm. Ooh, so much drama! I love it. Yeah, that's a very dramatic battle. Chubachu raised his hand and coughed a few times. The salty tang of blood rose in his throat and trickled from the corners of his mouth to dampen his fingers. It is a nice composition. He swiped it away with the back of his hand, indifferent, and slumped against a large boulder, settling in to observe the battle. His eyes narrowed slightly as he fought down nausea and dizziness. Fan Yun, he called, you went to great lengths to lure me here. Xiao Lue may not have shown himself, but what's transpired here today will be a harsh blow to him. I already outlived my usefulness. Why not kill me first? It's no use. Fan Yun laughed. It's no use trying to provoke me. Deputy Chief Fang is a peerless martial artist. I won't have any peace if I don't defeat him now. Buchu, do you know why I refuse to accept you as my disciple? His next attack missed, but he didn't force the offensive. His steps were feather light as he and Feng Xiao circled each other, each patiently awaiting his chance. It was I who refused to take you as a master, said Chubuchu coolly. Don't get it backward. Fan Yun continued to smile, pretending not to hear. I read your fortune from your face when we first met. Your fate is a grim one, devoid of kin to aid you. You are destined to meet with calamity after calamity, and the moment you fail to overcome one, you will die a premature death, dragging those around you into disaster. Those close to you will only find misfortune. Look what happened this time. You were forced to come alone because Qiao Xian was injured. Isn't that right? He appeared to be talking to Chu Chu, but it was clear his words were meant for Feng Xiao. And so, hang on, my heating pad turned off. Other than exceptions like Chu Chu, who refused to acknowledge the influence of the heavens, everyone from the most exalted emperor to the lowest peddler believed in fate. Even Fan Yun himself, who'd seen nearly everything there was to see in the world, believed fate was not something humans could change. He'd once tried. When his old friend was gravely ill, he'd attempted to exchange part of his friend's destiny with his own. But in the end, that too had been in vain. Chubuchu's face was a mask of indifference, as unmoved as sturdy bamboo standing tall amidst the rain and wind. His frail, sickly body contained a core as hard and cold as steel. But even if he was indifferent to fate, it didn't mean others would be too. There were hundreds of ways to break one's enemy, but a blow to their mind was most effective. Loud scoff broke the silence. Feng Xiao was laughing. What a coincidence! A fortune teller once said that my fate is the most fortuitous possible. I was born with glory in hand, a silver spoon in my mouth. Even the lone star of calamity is helpless against me. Lao Fan, at your age, you really oughtn't put yourself through this. If you surrendered now and admit defeat, my venerable self might be convinced to leave your body intact. You'll at least be saved from roaming the underworld in search of your head. So, the Lone Star of Calamity is originally referred to a single faint star that could be seen between the fourth and seventh stars of the Big Dipper. It's used as a metaphor for grave misfortune or an existence that brings disaster to others. He lunged forward in another strike. Fan Yun met his blow, and their chi exploded with a roar that tossed them both backward. Fan Yun landed smoothly on his toes, his expression composed. Ooh, a little rhyme there. I forgot, said Fan Yun. As a demonic practitioner, you're more open-minded than most. Seeing Feng Xiao couldn't be distracted with words, Fan Yun fell silent. He drew his blade, and a sword glare burst from his chi and ripped toward Feng Xiao. At once, heavy rain and clouds cloaked the sky. As the attack streaked towards its target, the mist and rain melded, dappling a clear and rippling lake surface with shimmering scales beneath the crimson of the setting sun. It was a magnificent, fantastical sight. With a tap of his toes, Feng Xiao flew backward, his sleeves spread like wings as he shattered Fan Yun's illusions. The storm vanished in an instant, leaving a gloriously clear sky. I feel like I'm missing something. What's awesome? Am I missing some text? I feel like I'm missing some of the chat. What's awesome? Are we still talking about the composition? I didn't see any of that. I'm going to reload quickly. Hang on. I think I'm missing some of the chat. 1 second. Maybe this will help. 1 second. Nope. Nope, it didn't fix the chat. All right, well, if I don't seem to be responding to a message, maybe send it again. Because I guess I'm missing some messages. Oh well. All right, where was I? At once, heavy rain and cloud. That is it. Congratulations on finishing Disabled God of War. So. At once, the heavy rain and clouds choked the sky. As the attack streaked towards its target, the mist and rain melded, dappling a clear and rippling lake surface with shimmering scales beneath the crimson of the setting sun. It was a magnificent, fantastical sight. With the tap of his toes, Feng Xiao flew backward, his sleeves spread like wings as he shattered Fan Yun's illusions. The storm vanished in an instant, leaving a gloriously clear sky. Fan Yun didn't stop. He swept forward with the sword glare and in front of Feng Xiao in the blink of an eye. The after images of his bright sword wove themselves layer upon layer into a curtain of qi. As the misty rain scattered, another scene materialized, persistent and unfading as the wall of storm clouds. Rocks and sand flew from the force of the sword chi, and splintered leaves swirling through the air like rain. Feng Xiao was engulfed with nowhere to run. Okay. Oh. Let's see. I switched to live chat, so hopefully that fixes it. Okay. In the thick of battle, Feng Xiao could feel the depth of Fan Yun's swordplay, brilliant and ethereal, yet brimming with bloodlust. The moment he slipped, he'd be dead. Feng Xiao had known Fan Yun was a skilled martial artist, but he'd never taken him seriously as an opponent. The man was over 50, yet he had no reputation within the Jianghu. Whatever skill he had, it could hardly be spectacular. He'd obtained his position in the 13 floors because the pavilion leader valued his strategies, not his martial arts. In contrast, Yu Xiu and Yuan Sanxi were some of the finest martial artists of their generation. Now, Feng Xiao saw that he had been mistaken. Fan Yun wasn't simply a good martial artist. Even Feng Xiao, with all his pride, had to admit that his skills ranked far above the top tier. This man could compete on even footing with the grandmasters. Why would such a powerful martial artist be completely unknown? Thoughts racing, Feng Xiao suddenly hit on a possibility. Liu Li Palace of Feng Shang Isle was responsible for all martial arts rankings. Their records of the martial world weren't perfect, but they were close. Fan Yun could easily have used his connections there to expunge his name from the sex records. He wasn't a member of the Jianghu and did not travel its roads, nor did he fight often. It was unsurprising few people knew of him. Pain spiked through Feng Xiao's back where he'd expelled Yu Xiu's needle. His meridians there were undoubtedly injured. But Feng Xiao's hand remained steady. The zither string shot from his sleeve stretched taut. One end remained in his grip, while the other dove toward the onrushing sword glare, ringing brightly as it tore through the arcing sword chi and shattered the mirage. As the note from the string reached Fan Yun's ears, sound waves infused with Feng Xiao's internal energy blasted away the qi protecting Fan Yun and funneled into his eardrums. Fan Yun hadn't anticipated that his opponent would transform sound itself into a weapon. He looked at Feng Xiao in surprise. The Fajing sect specialized in the use of the zither in combat. Feng Xiao would have been more at ease if he'd had one with him. Alas, he had already removed the precious Yu Yin strings one by one. Fan Yun was an educated man. Had he known the string attacking him came from the zither on par with the renowned Rao Liang, he'd have likely flown into a rage and stabbed Feng Xiao to death right then and there. So yes it is. To answer your question, Truffle, it would be an injustice. Apparently it's an injustice to Fan Yun. But he didn't know, and so his hand only trembled slightly as the sound waves disrupted his attack. The sword glare shivered, and the curtain of after images scattered its layers into the sky. Like the howling sea winds, it gathered the fury of raging winds to churn the clouds and batter the shores as it once again swallowed Feng Xiao. From within the sword glare, Feng Xiao flicked another string at Fan Yun. Like adversaries rushing toward each other on a narrow road, they met head on. Victory would be determined not by their minute differences in skill, but through the smallest variables. And there were countless such variables in a duel of this caliber. Feng Xiao's injuries hadn't escaped Fan Yun's notice. Feng Xiao's right hand was unsteady, and his attacks were slightly weaker on that side. It was an extremely subtle difference, but Fan Yun saw it. Of course, he took advantage. The right side of the screen of sword chi grew denser as it continued its assault. Suddenly, Fan Yun heard Chubuchu's voice. I know who entrusted you with this task. The words were as faint and misty as drizzling rain on a spring night, tiny pinpricks of silver, but Fan Yun's sharp ears would have picked them up even if they were as soft as a mosquito's buzz. It was the Emperor of Chen, said Chubuchu. Not the current emperor, Chen Shu Bao, but the previous emperor, Chen Shu. Emperor Xuan was a skilled and capable leader who accomplished whatever he set out to do. His reign lasted more than a dozen years. Though he wasn't among the most brilliant of emperors, he was wise. Unfortunately, he died young, leaving no one qualified to succeed him. His son, Chen Shubao, was wholly unlike him, an immature fool, who has wasted generations of his forefathers' blood, sweat, and tears. In that moment, Fan Yun wished he could turn back time itself and stop Chubuchu from speaking. But such a thing was impossible. Chubuchu had already spoken, and all Fan Yun could do was let the words drift into his ears. The chief of the Shuoyui Bureau truly deserved his reputation. Every word was a knife, stabbing unerringly into the tenderest spots in Fan Yun's heart and shattering his composure. Xiansheng, you were close to Emperor Xuan. On his deathbed, he entrusted you with his son. Yet that son was a fool beyond saving. But your old friend had passed, and you'd given him your solemn word. You had no choice but to dedicate yourself to carrying out his request, just as Zhu Guoliang attempted to prop up that foolish emperor of Shu Han. You've been turning this way and that, spinning in futile circles. You instigated our conflict with the 13 floors of Yunhai, all for the sake of the Emperor of Southern Chen. But the greatest pity is that the Emperor will never understand your kindness. No matter how exemplary your martial arts, no matter how clever your plots and schemes, I fear you're fated to walk the path of that great strategist and perish on the Wuzhang plains. You know it's impossible, yet you must attempt it. Surely Xiansheng knows what awaits him at the end of this road. Chubuchu's words rushed out faster and faster, each a dagger striking its mark, carving open flesh to reveal white bone. Fan Yun's breath hitched and his sword glare wavered. Had Chubuchu spoken these words at any other moment, they wouldn't have had the effect they did now. Fan Yun suddenly regretted the mercy he'd shown Chubuchu. He should have killed this man first. He lost his composure for the briefest moment, but that was enough for Feng Xiao. The zither string tore through the screen of after images and pierced Fan Yun's sword hand. Feng Xiao shot forward right behind it. Fan Yun paled in alarm. Before he could dodge, Feng Xiao's palm slammed into his chest. Fan Yun stumbled backward and hacked up a mouthful of blood. I don't know why, but I don't know if I missed another message. Did you say anything, Truffle, after No problem, YouTube is sneaky sometimes, because if you did, I didn't see it. Feng Xiao gave him no chance to recover. He pressed forward, striking thrice in rapid succession. Fan Yun took the first two head on, staggering back as his face turned ashen. By the time the third blow arrived, he'd had enough. He turned and ran, leaping down the cliff and landing on the stones below. Within a few more bounds, his figure vanished into the mountain mists. Okay. I see. Erlong! Moments after Fan Yun disappeared, a large group rushed over, and at their head was Ming Yue, the third chief of the Jijian Bureau, with the Bureau's eagle riders behind him. Among them was another familiar face, Lin Yong, the young master of Yandang Mountain Estate. Chubu had used up all his breath with his final speech. He could hold on no longer. He slumped to the side, pain spiking through him as his injured body struck the rocks, yet unable to stop himself. Feng Xiao swiftly caught him before his head slammed into the ground. He looked at Ming Yue in surprise. "You certainly know how to make an entrance," she said with acid. Ming Yue's smile was strained. "Their lair is well hidden. We looked over half the mountain and couldn't find it. I happened to capture this man and had him lead us here." Feng Xiao jerked his chin, signaling for Ming Yue to unseal Lin Yang's mute acupoint. The instant his voice was freed, Lin Yang cried, "Yun Tian, I've never done you any harm. I couldn't help them hurt you. Yuan Sanxi told me to poison you, but I refused. From the first time I laid eyes on you, I've always admired you. Even a glance from you is enough to make me happy." Feng Xiao's mouth twitched. "Gag him!" "Don't! I'll stop talking, all right?" Feng Xiao knew perfectly well that Lin Yang only appeared open and sociable. In reality, he was a schemer. Why else would he have feigned harmlessness to conceal his membership in the 13 floors of Yunhai? No matter what he babbled, Feng Xiao remained unmoved. "Where are the others?" "When the fire broke out, that old bastard Ning Shiwu fled even faster than I did. I was trapped within the array and delayed for some time. I didn't see anyone when I came out. The only ones I ran into were your subordinates here." "Then where's your pavilion leader, Xiao? Can he really remain uninvolved after an incident like this?" Lin Yang composed himself. "The 13 floors of Yunhai place great value on hierarchy. I've never met the pavilion leader. Only the likes of Fan Xiansheng and Yushiu saw him regularly." Chibuchu coughed. "He's lying. Extract a confession from him once we get back. Use incense of helplessness." Lin Yang's face fell. Burning hatred flashed in his eyes. He shook off the riders holding him and turned to flee. Silver light shot from Ming Yue's sleeve and struck Lin Yang's shoulder. He fell down with a cry, and the eagle riders pounced on him to restrain him. A drizzling rain began to fall again. Feng Xiao had neither the strength nor inclination to interrogate Lin Yang just now. He waved a hand for eagle riders to take him away. Spotting Chubuchu still on the ground, Ming Yue strode over to help him up. Chubuchu accepted his assistance, thanking him in a low voice. Behind him, Feng Xiao said coolly, "This invalid can't even stand, and you want him to walk by himself. How far do you think he'll get?" Chubuchu felt his feet leave the ground. A moment later, he was cradled in Feng Xiao's arms. "And where's my pen?" Ooh! 66, I think. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 55, 60, 65, 70, 71. We're at 71. And ooh, I agree, Truffle. Ming Yue was an upright person. This sight was a shock to him. Erlong, you're injured. Let me carry him. I've already picked him up. Switching hands now will only be a hassle. Meng Xiao wrinkled his nose at Chu. You smell like blood and dirt. It's nauseating. Didn't you hear what that fan bastard said? Your fate is harsh. Anyone who gets close will suffer. I may be destined for greatness, but don't think for a moment I'll let you leech good fortune from me when we get back to the capital. Hurry up and find a fortune teller. Change your fate. I don't want your bad luck rubbing off on me. He's carrying him. You'd think working with Feng Xiao would immunize him to shocks. Apparently not. Chu was exhausted. The jostling as Feng Xiao carried him made his stomach churn. Could only press his lips tightly together against the rising desire to cough up blood and use what little strength he had to roll his eyes. Behind them, Ming Yue listened in confusion. If he's worried about bad luck, why carry him down the mountain? Is he actually complaining, or is this some bizarre sort of attempt at sarcasm? Feng Xiao, too late. I already called dibs. Right? Oh, my ear suddenly became super itchy. It's weird. Maybe someone's talking about me. Okay. Chapter 127. Okay, so it's actually 57. Chapter 127. Incense of helplessness produced entirely different results depending on the person upon whom it was used. Feng Xiao still remembered the way Chu had endured the bone-melting pain of the incense, yet retained enough reason to meet him in a clash of wits. Indeed, perhaps Chu's biggest mistake was that he had been too calm and sober under the effects of the incense. It had roused Feng Xiao's suspicions. Also, I found the book I was looking for. I'm doing a little better. It's only a week overdue. And that's like what, $1? Yu Xiu, too, had inhaled this incense thanks to Chu's scheming. He'd fought fiercely against Feng Xiao while poisoned and even managed to escape. Lin Yang, on the other hand, crumpled like wet paper. Lin Yang told us everything he did as a member of the 13 floors of Yunhai, Ming Yue said, relaying the results of his interrogation to Feng Xiao and Chu. Each director has defined responsibilities, and his was finance. Xiao Le provided him with financial resources, and he made a great deal of money for them. According to him, the 13 floors are highly decentralized. As long as there was no pressing matters, the members didn't communicate. He knows very little. He can't even tell us what other pawns Xiao Le might have planted in the north. The only somewhat useful lead he shared was the various methods by which Yandong Mountain Estate directly or indirectly contacted Xiao Le. Oh, they stopped doing fines in your area? That's awesome. Ming Yue paused, but Xiao Le never showed up to this meeting. We can only assume he noticed something suspicious about Fan Yun and declined to step into the trap. Now that we have Lin Yang, he's probably disposed of those methods of contact. I fear when we send people to investigate, they'll find an empty building. Or a trap? Probably both. Of the current directors, Yu Xiu, Lin Yang, Duan Qihu, Feng Xiaolian, and Yu Hang have been eliminated. And Fan Yun, Xiao Lue's most valued strategist, has betrayed him. He can't use him either. Without Fan Yun, the 13 floors is a dragon with one eye, a bird without wings. I doubt they'll give us any more trouble. I'm not sure I agree with that statement. Although Ming Yue was the third chief of the Jian Bureau, he lived a simple life. He'd never made a name for himself in the Jianghu, nor could he boast any grand achievements in the imperial court. He remained inconspicuous, and thus most people considered Feng Xiao the supporting pillar of the Jijian Bureau and discounted the third chief as insignificant. But Chu knew better. Feng Xiao spent his days running hither and thither. Without someone in the capital to oversee daily operations, the Jijian Bureau would have collapsed long ago. Thus, he felt no surprise upon hearing Ming Shui's methodical analysis. Indeed, it was wholly within his expectations. Ming Yue's strength lay not in garnering glory or attention, but in standing guard behind the scenes. If Feng Xiao was the wings and fangs of the Jijian Bureau, Ming Yue was its steady beating heart. What about the guards and maids from the caves? Feng Xiao asked. Did we learn anything from them? Shaking his head, Ming Yue explained. They were recruited to the 13 floors of Yunhai after their own sects were destroyed. They're no elite forces. Besides, they've been trapped in that cave for years. Oh, I thought it was months. But I guess it makes sense if it was years. That's awful. Most of them know very little, but a man named Liang Feng gave us one clue. He said that the pavilion leader had appeared at a previous gathering with someone else who wasn't present this time, a girl with a veil. He never saw her face, but he heard the pavilion leader call her Huan Yang. He said they seemed close. Yep, I'll take that as an injustice to innocence. I'll take that. So 5, 10, 15, 19. I think it depends on when they were recruited. Yeah. So they're at 19 for injustice to innocence. Feng Xiao instinctively glanced at Chu. Is there a woman in the Jianghu with the surname Huan? Chu coughed a few times and frowned. After thinking for a long time, he said firmly, No. Perhaps an alias. I'm kind of curious. I'm gonna look up what Huan might mean. Because, like, sometimes it's a name, a number. Change. Huan means change. Or, so, Huan means change, but then it also means exchange, barter, swap, trade. But there's also one that says joyful. The name Huan has origins in both Chinese and Vietnamese cultures, carries significant meaning. In Chinese, the name translates to affection or joyful, embodying positive feelings or emotional worth. But, like, the Google Translate, Chinese simplified, Huan means change. So we've got two very opposite meanings, either joyful or change. So I guess we'll have to keep our eyes and ears peeled and see which meaning applies, considering the direct translation is change, but then they say with the names it means Huan Li, mean in Chinese gaiety, gladness, glee, merriment, happiness, joy. I guess we'll see. So either it's like a pet name, maybe. Chinese Huan most commonly refers to Huan, meaning joyful, happy, pleased, or delighted. It is often used in names to express a cheerful nature. Other interpretations depend on the character, such as to return Huan or a surname. The Huan, return, give back, or pay back. Oh, payback! but it also could be an official, servant in a noble household, or eunuch. As a name, it means joyful or merry, often representing a wish for a happy life. Okay, so I guess that kind of might be leaning towards the happy life. Could mean like fortune. Okay. Okay. Interesting. But it's a woman, Huang Niang. He sat on the bed, wrapped in a blanket, his face lined with fatigue. Ming Yue and Feng Xiao had channeled him a sizable amount of qi, but it would take some time for his severely damaged body to heal. Something like the Wheel of Fortune. That could be it. Not only had he been made to hold his nose and take his medicine, whenever he pictured the displeased expression he was sure to see on the faces of the Shuiyue Bureau's other members, his mood sank lower still. As a powerful martial artist, Feng Xiao was far better off, yet even he was wrapped in layers of bandages beneath his clothes. Let me take care of the cleanup here, Ming Yue offered, seeing the poor state they were in. Save the rest for when we return to the capital. One more thing, though. We looked all through the caves, but we didn't find the Jade of Heaven Lake. Someone must have fled with it. When Fan Yun had said that the Jade of Heaven Lake could prolong his life, even Chu Chu had wavered. He was no god or immortal. He was a human being, bound to the rules of the mortal world, and he would rather live than die. Yet at this news, his expression remained devoid of emotion. Perhaps he was already accustomed to the callousness with which the heavens treated him. Through all these trials and tribulations, he'd learned to rely on himself alone, not anything so hollow as hope. That's depressing. Most ordinary men would be bedridden for weeks after being stabbed in the chest, yet here Chubuchu was, sitting up talking to Feng Xiao and Ming Yue. This, too, was proof of his iron will. Even the heavens couldn't touch him. Feng Xiao took a glance and found he couldn't stop himself from taking a second and a third. My oh my. Eventually, even Ming Yue noticed something was off. Puzzled, he looked at Feng Xiao, who promptly averted his eyes as if nothing had happened. 2 Shuiyue guards accompanied us up the mountain. Did you find them? Ming Yue sighed. I did. Their bodies were found at the foot. 1 second. I did. Their bodies were found at the foot of Mount Tianan. Both suffered a fatal blow to the skull. The 13 floors must have thought them too risky to keep alive, so they simply killed them and disposed of the bodies. Meng Xiao considered this. It's rare to kill bare-handed rather than with weapons. Perhaps it was Yuan Sunsi or Yu Xiu. No matter who did it, we will collect payment for this debt from the 13 floors of Yunhai, said Chubuchu coldly. Xiao Lue only has a few people left now. Yuan Sanxi and Ning Shiwu, as well as the others, said Feng Xiao. Knowing him, he would rather leave seats empty than fill them with inferior people. We merely need to find Xiao Lue, and we can eradicate the 13 floors of Yunhai once and for all. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Chibuchu's brow was heavy with fatigue. Even his voice had grown quieter. Fan Yun implied that the scope of Xiao Lue's operations stretched far beyond the handful of directions we know, and he's smart enough to have anticipated Fan Yun's betrayal. Feng Xiao chuckled. Xiao Lue never showed himself this time. Perhaps he decided... Meng Xi never showed himself this time. Perhaps he decided to let events take their course and exchange Yu Xiu and Yuan Sensi's lives for our own. Fan Yun was like the mantis stalking the cicada, planning to snap up the prize in the aftermath, unaware that Xiao Le was the oriole behind him wanting to strike, or waiting to strike. Ming Yue frowned. When Feng Xiao had left the capital, he'd only said he was going to find a new zither. Ming Yue had assumed him merely bored. He'd never imagined the journey would end in such a messy train of events. If Chubachu and Feng Xiao had been slightly less capable or a little less fortunate, they would both have lost their lives. The 13 floors of Yunhai were like a looming beast hidden in the shadows. As they slowly lured the monster into the open, they realized to their horror that its great jaws were already wide open. At any moment, it would snap them shut and crush its prey between its teeth. Xiao Lu's traces were scattered all across the north and south, from the halls of the imperial court to the depths of the Jianghu. There was nowhere the 13 floors couldn't touch. If even the governor of Bowling Commandery belonged to them, what about the positions between governor or below governor? Were there spies among the county magistrates and lieutenants? What about the positions above? Did agents of the 13 floors also lurk within the capital? Ming Yue's heart thudded. He suddenly understood why Xiao Lu was so determined to rid himself of Feng Xiao and Chu Wuchu. The Jiajian and Shuyui bureaus held the court and Jianghu within their grasp. Their reach extended beyond the Great Wall, complete with a vast network of information channels, both large and small. If their leaders were removed, the tiger would be declawed. It would still be a fearsome-looking beast, to be sure, but one that had lost most of its power. With nothing to fear, the spies the 13 floors had planted would silently flourish. And despite everything they'd discovered, there were more odd ties yet to be explained. I still think it's strange, said Ming Yue. The Central Plains have been in constant upheaval since the two Jin dynasties. There's been no lack of officials rising to power overnight, and cases where relatives of the royal family have seized the throne, but all these possessed either supporters at court or great military power. Xiao Le hails from the southern dynasty, but he doesn't even merit Chen Shubao's regard. His reputation in his own nation is modest, and his connections fall far short of what's required to usurp a throne. What's more, the forces of the 13 floors are not confined to any nation, but scattered across the land. Take Yuan Sensi. He achieved the rank of commandery governor, but he's a long way yet from making his mark in the central government. There's no way he can initiate a coup. Then there's Yu Xiu. If he was were still alive, and if the two of you hadn't exposed him, he might still be the Prince of Jin's trusted aide. But no matter how much trust the Prince of Jin placed in him, he would never launch a revolt just because Yu Xiu urged him to. Without someone closer to the throne, it doesn't matter how many spies the 13 floors have planted. They'd never be able to overthrow the emperor. Never say never. Chubuchu was silent for a moment, then said slowly, Yuan Sansi entered the court as an official. Who has he come into contact with over the years? Who promoted him, and who is he close to? I assume the Jijian Bureau can easily find out. An excellent point, Chief Chu. I'll investigate as soon as we return to the capital. This was indeed crucial information. Ming Yue hurriedly noted down everything about the case, lest he miss any detail. The Shuyui Bureau had no business interfering with the affairs of the Jijian Bureau. In the past, Feng Xiao would have mocked Chu Wuchu for his presumption, but now he remained quiet and made no objection. Ming Yue silently wondered if the sun would rise in the west next. Yu Xiu was with the Prince of Jin for several years, said Chu Wuchu. He may have influenced the prince to befriend certain people or to make specific suggestions to the empress. Such things have nothing to do with the Jianghu and are therefore out of the Zhuoyue Bureau's sphere. If the Jijian Bureau wishes to investigate, they should start there. If the Prince of Jin has a mercurial temper, the Prince of Jin has a mercurial temper, so it may take considerable effort. His voice grew softer and softer until Ming Yue could no longer make out the words. He looked up from his notes to find that Chubuchu had fallen asleep sitting up. While Ming Yue sat stunned, Feng Xiao had already stepped over. He helped Chubuchu lie down and covered him with the blanket. He's exhausted himself overthinking, said Ming Yue. If Chulang Jun keeps this up, I fear it isn't a good sign. He'd intended to say it was a sign he wouldn't live long, but it didn't feel right to speak it aloud. He swallowed his words back down. Without these things to busy himself with, he probably would have collapsed hours ago, Feng Xiao said. When Ming Yue looked back at him in confusion, Feng Xiao changed the subject. Fan Yun might not be loyal to the 13 floors, but he's still an important player in this game. He knows many of their secrets. We can't let him slip through our fingers. Find him as soon as possible. He may be the key to tracking down both the Jade and Xiao Lue. Ming Yue nodded his assent. Within his dreams, Chubuchu heard the murmur of voices drifting past like the shadows of a revolving lantern. The world slid by, faint and indistinct, like the various things and people he'd seen throughout his life. At last they receded like the tide, and everything returned to silence. Many times Chubuchu had felt that if he allowed himself to sleep, he would never wake again. A fatigue so immense it bordered on death would loom within his heart, wrapping around his body like dense silk until he was unable to breathe. But his life wasn't fated to end here. No matter how excruciating his dreams, he always struggled awake in the end and opened his eyes. Today was no different. Even he was impressed by his own tenacity sometimes. I'm impressed. Chubuchu stared at the bed canopy overhead, blinking slowly. It took him a quarter of an hour to recall where he was and why. He was in a small town at the foot of Mount Tiannan. After descending the mountain, Ming Yue had needed time to deal with the remnants of the 13 floors. He dispatched men to escort the guards and maids back to the capital for a thorough interrogation, while Feng Xiao and Chubuchu stayed and recuperated before beginning their own journey. At his bedside sat a letter stamped with the Zhuoyue Bureau's seal, the wax still intact. Chubuchu opened it and saw it was from Qiao Xian. The mark on the seal meant the contents weren't confidential, so it had likely arrived via official post. Either Ming Yue or Feng Xiao must have seen it and brought it to him. Qiao Xian explained that they'd found no traces of the 13 floors of Yunhai in Donghai Commandery. This was hardly surprising, as it was Fan Yun himself who had laid the false clues to lure him there. After Qiao Xian had been injured during their adventure in the Western Khaganate, Chubuchu had instructed her to stay in the capital. Apparently, she couldn't bear to remain idle and had run off to Donghai Commandery with Zhang Sun Bodhi. Chubuchu could see her disappointment at having nothing to show for it in every stroke of her brush as she asked him what they ought to do next. Voices rose outside. Chubuchu lit a candle and fed the letter bit by bit to the flame, burning the paper to ash. Then he got off the bed and stepped into his boots, planning to freshen up. The sweet fragrance of osmanthus wafted in through the window. After the time he'd spent in that dark, sunless cave, even an ordinary cloudy day was crisp and refreshing. Chubuchu was in a good mood. I wonder how long that's going to last. When he opened the door, he found Feng Xiao and Ming Yue playing a game at a small table in the yard. Injured he might be, but Deputy Chief Feng could never be happy quietly recuperating in bed. Chubuchu gave their game a brief glance before looking away in disinterest. Ming Yue stood and cupped his hands in greeting. As he ranked below Chubuchu, this was only proper. Chubuchu acknowledged him with a nod. No need to be so polite, Third Chief. Keep playing. I'm going to take a walk. Feng Xiao called him back. Care for a match? I don't know how to play. Feng Xiao was stunned. You don't know how to play Shupu? This and other board games like it had originated during the late Han Dynasty. Nowadays, it wasn't just popular in the capital. Master players roamed streets and marketplaces, even in remote locales. Chu Buchu answered Feng Xiao's question with a guileless expression. Is it strange that I don't know how to play? But it really was strange. Feng Xiao looked at him as he might regard a bizarre bird with 4 wings. After staring for a long moment, he said, I left some food for you on the stove. I'll teach you after you eat. Chu Buchu shook his head. Why do I need to learn? All you do is work. Are there any hobbies you enjoy? Work is my hobby, said Chu Buchu unfazed. Feng Xiao shot Ming Yue a look as if to say, see? Ming Yue was fully on board. Wouldn't it be wonderful if Deputy Chief Feng, who was all play and no work, and Chief Chu Buchu, who was all work and no play, could rub off on each other a bit? Phrasing. I don't know how long you're going to keep that thought, especially if things work out the way they will. But in the face of Jubuchu's dull response, no matter how he racked his brain, Ming Yue couldn't think of what to say. Only Feng Xiao retained his enthusiasm. Yep, exactly. Freezing! How about we make a bet, he suggested. I'll teach you the rules and we'll play a few rounds. Best 2 out of 3. The loser must agree to one request made by the winner. Chubuchu finally grew interested. Any request? Feng Xiao arched a brow. Of course, as long as it's within my power to grant. Such a generous offer, Deputy Chief Feng. You mustn't go back on your word when the time comes. Feng Xiao smiled a little. What will you request? Or could it be that you want me? And that's another shamelessness. We got it at 72. We are definitely getting to 100 by the end of this series. Probably by the end of this book. We are on part 2 out of 6. We've already added like 20. A muscle in Chubuchu's jaw jumped as he remembered what happened in the array. He'd scrubbed it from his mind at once, refusing to dwell on anything so unnecessary. It had been an accident. Or perhaps Feng Xiao had acted on some desperate impulse. Maybe it was even a joke. The only thing it couldn't be was serious. Feng Xiao was never serious. Feng Er loved himself more than anyone. How could he hold any true regard for someone else? And Chu Chu was destined for a life of solitude. Why worry about something so pointless? I want the names of Sioux officials in every county and commandery at every rank, Chibuchu said languidly. Feng Xiao's smile froze on his face. The Ministry of Personnel had their own list of officials, but the Jijian bureaus were more detailed. Their records included things like hobbies, number of concubines, and even secrets, such as if they snored in their sleep. Chubuchu had coveted such a list for a long time, and today he finally had his chance. How could he let it slip by? Ming Yue turned his head away. It took all he had to stop himself from laughing. Would we consider that a justice to service worker where he saw his boss get pwned? I'm considering it a justice to service worker. So that's a count of 3 for justice to service workers. All right, 225. Chapter 128. The rules of Shupu were easily grasped. After watching Feng Xiao and Ming Yue's next game, Chubuchu understood well enough. The game didn't rely only on strategy. Luck was needed as well. Chubuchu turned out to be fairly lucky and won the first match. Ming Yue still had business to finish, so he excused himself after a round. Feng Xiao and Chubuchu sat together in the garden, surrounded by the sweet scent of osmanthus. Sunlight trickled through the pale yellow petals. The autumn sun bathed them in its meager warmth, and the fragrance of flowers drifted on the breeze. But the heart of the tableau was the pair sitting beneath the tree. Where people were, the bustle and vigor of life followed. The game board sat upon a stone table polished to a spotless gleam. Even the jade green teacups at the side of the board rippled like a clear emerald spring. Naturally, these items all belonged to Feng Xiao. Ming Yue knew his boss too well. He'd bought a new tea set and washed it thrice with boiling water. Otherwise, Feng Xiao would doubtlessly complain about some imagined speck of dust at the bottom of his cup until the end of time. Chubuchu held a bowl of millet porridge, sipping as he played. The warmth flowed from his throat to his stomach, revitalizing his body slowly but surely. He was a much more adaptable creature than Feng Xiao. If there was no other food to be had, someone could hand him a bowl of congee mixed with gravel. As long as he was hungry enough, he'd placidly lift the bowl and eat. A little less than half a bowl later, he was beginning to feel full. His hand holding the bowl paused, and he looked at the board, frowning. Feng Xiao arched a gleeful brow. I won. Chubuchu remained impassive. It's only the second round. In that case, the final round would be the decisive one. These were men who spent their days flirting with danger, crossing mountains of blades and seas of flames. Countless rare treasures had passed through their hands, yet now they were getting fired up over a tiny bet. Chubuchu was determined to get his hands on those names, while Feng Xiao never lost any bet he wanted to win. Tasks discharged, Ming Yue returned to watch the match. The moment he reached the courtyard entrance, he stopped in his tracks. Not only had Feng Xiao lost his previous spiritedness, he now looked grave. He looked at Chubuchu, then down at the game board. His expression shifted. What happened? Ming Yue looked at them in bafflement, wondering if he ought to step into the crossfire or stand aside and enjoy the show. He swiftly chose the latter. Ming Yue stared keenly at the board and watched as Chubuchu's glass game piece crossed the finish line first. Chief Chu won, Ming Yue thought to himself. Feng Xiao had always been self-assured to the point of arrogance. He rarely suffered defeat. No wonder he seemed displeased. This isn't your first time playing Shupu. You're far too comfortable with these little tricks, he snorted. Why do you say that? Chubuchu drawled, his fingers drumming against his porcelain bowl. His mood had lifted considerably. Feng Xiao watched his fingers. If he had known this little tick earlier, perhaps he'd have had a better read on Chubuchu's intentions during their previous debates. Well, it wasn't too late to start now. This was just a friendly game, yet you use such tricks. Don't you find it unbecoming, Taoist Master Chu? Feng Xiao was somewhat incredulous. All's fair in love and war. The corners of Chubuchu's eyes crinkled as he broke into a rare, genuine smile. Best 2 out of 3, I believe you said. Since I won, I expect you'll keep your promise and hand me the names as soon as possible. One more game. I'm tired. Of course, Chubuchu wouldn't give Feng Xiao the chance to turn things around. He rose languidly and walked back to his rooms to rest. At last, Ming Yue approached. He eyed Feng Xiao, who sat with one leg crossed smugly over the other, waving his fan. It was as if a peacock's vibrant tail was poised behind him, ready to unfurl at any moment. You lost to him on purpose? Ming Yue asked. Meng Xiao yawned. Oh, when you want something from someone, you need to first offer something in exchange. Understand? I don't. That's why I'm number 2 and you're number 3. The corner of Ming Yue's mouth jumped. Chubuchu is a clever man. Don't you think he knows you meant to lose? So what if he does? If he knows and played along anyway, then he's unconcerned with your intentions and only cares about the list of names. Sir, at this point, Ming Yue shot him a sympathetic glance. I don't know what you want from Chubuchu, but it's clear he doesn't care for your plans at all. Feng Xiao's fan froze mid-wave, and he stared at Ming Yue. Lao-san, he said, narrowing his eyes in suspicion. Why do I feel you've suddenly grown a bit smarter? You're not an imposter from the 13 floors of Yunhai, are you? That's an injustice to service workers. All right. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. Ming Yue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's called an objective observation, he replied, which I can make because I have no horse in this race. You always look down on others. Even the Prince of Jin is no exception. It's rare for you to show any vulnerability, even for the sake of your schemes. Speaking of the Prince of Jin, said Feng Xiao, since Yushu earned his trust, there's a chance others from the 13 floors may be loitering around the prince and his family. The matter I asked you to look into, how did it go? The change of subject, Ming Yue sobered. He shook his head. The Crown Prince seemed to be in the clear, but it's not easy for the Jijian Bureau to intervene in palace affairs. The Shuoyui Bureau must also be doing their own investigations. The Empress places significant trust in Chubuchu. They may have already uncovered something. You seem to be spending more time together these days. You should ask him. I did. After the incident with Yushu, the Empress ordered a thorough investigation of the palace. They turned up a few suspicious individuals, but nothing connected to the 13 floors of Yunhai. If we take an optimistic view, Xiao Lu's reach doesn't extend as far as we feared. But if we look at it pessimistically, he has entrenched his pieces so deeply that locating them will take time. Either way, there's someone I need you to keep an eye on once we return to the capital. Who? Feng Xiao didn't keep him in suspense. Princess Li Ping. Understanding dawned on Ming Yue. You suspect some rebels evaded capture after the Thousand Lantern Banquet. You think they're still lurking around her? Whether they are or not, Feng Xiao said evenly, we can't relax our surveillance on the princess's residence, both inside and out. The moon waxed and then waned. Qi Shu had long passed, and the Mid-Autumn Festival was drawing near. Since the day Great Su was founded, the emperor had chosen to disregard the old systems of the previous dynasty, prioritizing change over convenience. He implemented sweeping reforms, relocating the capital, enacting new laws, and reducing taxes to simulate national recovery. Though everyone anticipated an eventual war between Su and the Khaganate, the prices of everyday goods, firewood, rice, salt, and oil, weighed more heavily than any faraway threat on the mind of most. As the new dynasty and its policies took effect, the people found themselves with more wealth in their pockets. The common folk had more to spend on food and festivities, and the streets and alleys bustled with their preparations. But among the officials and nobles, the prevailing topic was not the upcoming Mid-Autumn Festival, but Princess Lanling and County Duchess Yuan. Princess Lanling had always been meek and obedient to her parents, but rumors now swirled that when the Empress had brought up the subject of marriage, she had boldly requested to marry Feng Xiao, the deputy chief of the Jijian Bureau. When it was no secret that Princess Lan Ling had taken a fancy to Feng Xiao. No one thought she'd dare to propose marriage to him to the Empress herself. Coincidentally, Feng Er had recently returned to the capital. Many were eagerly waiting eagerly awaiting his response, hoping for a bit of scandalous entertainment. As for Duchess Yuen, the chatter about her was, unsurprisingly, of a similar nature. The Duchess was of marrying age, but her situation was more complicated than that of Princess Lanling. Her mother, Princess Li Ping, was determined to find her daughter the perfect husband, yet she disdained all the suitors willing to marry Yuan Yiying, considering them beneath the girl. At the same time, the few men who met her stringent criteria had no interest in marrying her daughter. As a result, Princess Li Ping visited the palace often, turning to her supremely capable mother for help. Empress Dugu was happy to see her daughter more frequently. She had many children, but it was her eldest daughter who received the lion's share of her love and attention. It was to her mother's great sadness that, despite her lofty status, Princess Li Ping's life had been a difficult one. She'd lost her husband and had no sons. Her only child was her daughter, Yuan Ying. Princess Li Ping's parents would eventually pass away and leave her. Once her daughter married, the only person she could rely on would be her brother, the future emperor. Contemplating her daughter's circumstances, Empress Dugu's heart swelled with compassion. Princess Li Ping laid her head on her mother's lap, and Empress Dugu stroked the raven hair beneath her fingers, anguish washing over her at the strands of gray mingled within the black. Like any mother, she loved her children dearly. Even as she held the title of one of the two saints, even as she immersed herself in government affairs, she remained a mother, and in this case, one burdened by a guilty conscience. I've heard you've practically gone cross-eyed trying to pick a husband for Ying. There are so many eligible men out there. Have none managed to catch your eye? She said lightly. Could it be you're like Ah Wu, hoping for Feng Xiao as your son-in-law? Princess Li Ping shifted her head on her mother's lap. She was no longer a young woman, and the loveliness of her face couldn't conceal the lines at the corner of her eyes. Yet no matter her age, in front of her mother, she remained the sweet girl who'd forever revered her parents. This was something time would never change. Princess Li Ping smiled. Feng Erlang is a fine man. He's a peerless martial artist and a talented official. I don't blame Ah Wu for being drawn to him. If I were 10 years younger, perhaps I'd feel the same. The Ah Wu they discussed was, of course, none other than Princess Lanling, Yang Ah Wu, who'd fallen hopelessly in love with the deputy chief of the Jijian Bureau. The Empress smiled back. Unfilial daughter, how can you call yourself old in front of your mother? You're young yet, and the eldest princess of this dynasty. If you found a good man, simply tell your father and me. Why suffer so? Princess Li Ping's expression darkened, but she remained silent. If you don't wish to remain a widow, Empress Dugu said evenly, you ought to seek a talented consort who can stand openly by your side. Carry on like this, and sycophants will flock to you, hoping to use you as a stepping stone for their own rise. You'll face more incidents like that one at the Thousand Lantern Banquet. Abruptly, the princess dropped to her knees. Mother, that incident was my fault. I endangered both the crown prince and the Prince of Jin. If anything should happen to them, I couldn't atone even with 1,000 deaths. I promise it will never happen again. The Empress sighed and reached down to help her up. I don't blame you, and neither does your father. You are too hard on yourself, Yuan Yun. Yuan Yun is long gone. You owe him nothing, and there's no need to remain a widow for him. Consider this. If your new husband belongs to one of the 7 great families, his status will overshadow that of Ying's father. Over time, people will forget. They will no longer bring it up. Mother, lately I keep thinking, if only I hadn't married Yuan Yun, how wonderful everything could have been. Princess Li Ping fell into her lap again and sobbed quietly. Empress Dugu was harsh and imperious, while her eldest daughter was soft and meek. The two couldn't have made a greater contrast. Even so, the Empress had an endless well of patience for the eldest princess. Silly child, the past is behind us. There's no need to dwell on it. If you don't wish to remarry, I won't force you. But you've looked at so many talented men for Ying. Don't you have any favorites? Princess Li Ping shook her head. Everyone is lacking. Ying, she's too naive, easily swayed by others. I just want her to be safe, happy, and carefree for the rest of her life. Empress Dugu mulled it over. In that case, her husband must be clever and powerful, someone who can protect her. Here's a thought. What about Chubu Chu? Princess Li Ping's head jerked up in shock. Back to the light, Empress Dugu looked down at her, expression difficult to discern. That's quite a suggestion from the Empress. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of thought she was going to say, why don't you marry Feng Xiao, not your daughter? I was not expecting the Chubu Chu name drop. I guess I should have, but I definitely was not. But in any case, we will see next week exactly what the princess's reaction will be to that suggestion. Yeah, oh boy. That's definitely an oh boy. I agree, Truffle. I'm sure Feng Xiao will feel many things if the queen tries to press that suggestion. I was about to say issue, and I was like, it's going to become an issue. It's not one yet. Something tells me a lot of vinegar will be drunk. Yeah. There will be schemes, multiple schemes probably being had, but no, I look forward to it. Can't wait for this drama. Me too. But in any case, it is getting late and I am tired. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and listening. I had a great time. I'm sorry that the chat was being weird tonight. I will make sure it's on live chat from now on. But yeah, have a great weekend, everyone. I hope the weather is nice and you get to enjoy it. But yeah, for anyone watching later, I hope you enjoyed as well. And I will see you next time. Good night.